Hello, my name is Trotsky. Today I will be covering editing meshes for Fallout 4 in 3ds Max 2013 and rebuilding collisions for them. So the first thing we need to do is import our, our model, which today I'm working on the Red Rocket Workshop. It's one of the more complex of the individual structures that they have in Fallout 4. You want to make sure that you have flip UV checked here, otherwise your UV map is going to be upside down and your textures won't match up properly. Uncheck vertex colors and generally just make your window look like mine does here, and then import. Now I'm assuming that you have the Bethesda's Havoc content tools installed properly and you know how to use 3ds Max, NIFScope, and Elric. I'll lightly cover some controls for each, so just stick with me and we'll work through this. So you'll hit Alt-W to bring up your perspective view and hold Alt and click in on your middle mouse button to rotate. If you let go of Alt and use your middle mouse button, you can move the screen around. And then scrolling moves in and out. Alright, so what we're going to do first is we have all of our objects selected. We're going to right click. We're going to convert to editable poly. And then we will select our first object that we want to get rid of, and with this you can either get rid of the whole thing or you can click on element here and then drag select just these pieces, or you can just select those pieces, the whole thing, just the front ones, just the back ones, but I'm going to be selecting the back 4 pieces here, and then just hit delete. Then you unclick element to go back to object mode to select your next object. And you want to go back to element mode because if you notice, your sign is part of the same object as your fuel pump arms here. So we're going to select those, delete those, go back to object mode, select that object, element, select those, and delete. This is all the editing that I'm going to do for right now. Oh, sorry, almost forgot. These 2 dots right here, they're part of the back of one of those meshes, and I do not know why just those 2 got attached to the main building, but for some reason that's just the way they decided to make it. So once you've done that, we're going to come here to our layers, manage layers, and open up, expand our layers. Alright, if you look down here, you have 2 objects that are not rendered. One of these is going to be used as your dummy node. I generally tend to use whatever the file name dummy node is as my dummy node to link everything else to. So we can take this, select it, and delete that. Now we have our, I believe it's 10 objects, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 objects, and our dummy node. So once we have that done, we're going to select all, and then hold down Alt and drag select to unselect the dummy node. Hit link, which is select and link over here. Then we're going to select by name, select our Red Rocket Workshop 1, and link. Then unselect your objects, click on select object, and go back to select name and display children. This should show all of your objects as children of the Red Rocket Exterior Workshop 01. Hit OK. Personally, I really despise Bethesda's naming conventions for their objects. It, they're not very they're not very explanatory. So I just rename all of my objects here. So I have rocket. And this is going to be supports. And so on. And I will come back once I've finished all of these. And we're back. Okay, so just go back, look at all of your objects, and make sure they're named how you want them named. Something that's descriptive of what the object is, and not that long string of crap that Bethesda likes to name everything. It's going to make it a lot easier for when you're creating collisions. Okay, so now everything is parented or children of your dummy node. Everything is named the way you want it. So what we're going to do next is we're going to come here to Render, Material Editor, and go to Slate Material Editor. And we are going to select 10 BS Lighting Effect shaders. And so just double click and it'll appear in your View 1. And once you have 10 objects in there, just scroll out a bit and just kind of line them up so that they're in a stack. They don't have to be perfect, but sometimes I can be a little OCD, so just bear with me. That's going to irritate the heck out of me. Okay, I'll ignore that. So now we have all of our shaders laid out in our viewport. Scroll in a little bit so we can see all of them. We want to go to NifScope and open up the original model that we have edited. And what we're going to do is we're going to select each object and look for its shader property material file. And then we're going to come back here, double click on the material, go to Load, Interiors, Red Rocket, and I believe that was 05. So we'll select 05 here, Open. We want to show texture, and this is how we're going to know if our textures are working properly. You want to select the dot here at the end and ensure you get this red wire. And then you're going to come over here and drop it on your rocket. Your rocket is going to turn black, which is not a problem. We're going to fix that. You're going to go down here to Diffuse Texture, and you are going to go to Red Rocket, Exterior 5, hit Open, and there, your materials and your textures are showing up. And we're just going to repeat this process for each object in the render window, and I'll come back when that's finished. And we're back. As you can see, I've used a blue texture for the trim on the awnings. I just like the contrast of it. You can choose either the red or the blue. Bethesda packaged both with the game, so I'm just using the blue today. Alright, now that our textures are set, we're going to clone each of our objects. So we're going to select the object, right click, select Clone, Copy, and for the naming convention I usually use C underscore and the object name to let me know that's the collision for that object. So I will do that for each object and come back when that's finished. And we're back. So just go to Manage Layers, just make sure that you've selected all of your objects and created a collision model for them. Alright, just to make sure that you have all of them and you haven't forgotten any. So what we're going to do next is we're going to select our first object and make sure that the collision object is the object selected. Okay, so building collision models. We're going to select our object, hold down Control, and select both. Go to Havoc Content Tools, Physics, Create Rigid Body with Proxies. Ensure that your root object, not the C object, is the parent shape, and hit Yes. We're going to come here and set our mass to 60. Select the collision object and set our collision type, our shape type, to mesh. Next, we're going to go to collision group. If it's not in your menu here, you can go to More and select it from the list here, and it is not here for me because I have it in the menu. So select your collision group. Material is going to be whatever the material is. So for the rocket, I use metal and hollow because it's a hollow rocket shape. Object type is static. And then click Apply to Selected. You're going to do that for every object. So you're going to select the collision object, hold down Control, and select the other object. Havoc, Physics, Rigid Body with Proxies. Ensure that your object is selected and hit Yes. Continue, 60. Select the other object. Mesh, collision group. This one I set to metal light because it's just a light flimsy piece of metal that's a facade that wraps around the ceiling. Then select static, apply to selected, and continue that for all the rest of the objects. I will return when I finish that. And we're back. Okay, now that you have all of your collisions created, we're pretty much done, except for one thing. Come into your Manage Layers and then select all of your non-collision objects, and we're going to freeze those. Alright, now while those are frozen, we're going to select all of our collision objects, and thank you to Insane Plumber for directing me to this. So we are going to go to Modifiers, Mesh Editing, and Pro Optimizer. So for Pro Optimizer, what we're going to do is we're going to select each of our objects, and we are going to calculate and drop our vertex percentage down to 25%. And that is going to, as you can see, decrease the number of polys that we have for our collision mesh. Because our collision mesh doesn't need to be as high poly as our art model. So we're just going to do that for all of the objects that we have. So we will click on this and Okay, so once we've done our Pro Optimizer, we're going to collapse 2 and do that for all of our shapes. And I believe that is all of our meshes. So as you can see, if I can get it right, correct angle on it, if you notice our wall here in the corners, the mesh has pulled away a little bit. It's not going to be a big issue because you're not going to see those objects. As you notice, your collision is not as curved as the art object is, which is fine. It works, and you have fewer polys now. So we're going to go back and select all of our objects that are not collision, and we're going to unfreeze them. And close that. Make sure none of your objects are selected, and we're going to export, and we're going to export as Gamebryo. Make sure you export as Gamebryo, not NetImmerse Gamebryo. This is the Bethesda plugin, and we're going to put this in a place that has the proper format. It has to be in a folder called meshes in order for Elric to work properly. So I will select Red Rocket Exterior Workshop since I've done this mesh before, and save. Yes, I want to override it. Now go into Edit here, BS Havoc Process plugin, Edit plugin, and make sure that Create Compressed Mesh Shapes is unchecked. Once you've done that, hit OK. It'll generate your scene, and then you can come over here to your Fallout 4 folder, Tools, Elric, open up Elric, load your settings, which are in your Elric folder under Settings, PC Meshes, yes, then Convert Files, select the object that you named, select the NIF file that you named your object, and open, and it will automatically convert for you. Now, open up your object in NIF scope. You can close this other one because we're done with it. And here you have your edited object. Open up here. You have each object has its own collision model. The reason we do it like this instead of creating one giant collision object and attaching it to the dummy node is if somebody wants to go in and say take off the sign, all they have to do is come here to sign. They can remove the whole branch, and that will remove the collision for that branch as well, instead of having to go back in and edit the entire model. They can now remove each collision with each object. So once that is done, we can put it in game. And in order to do that, you go into the CK, duplicate the object, and put it in game as you normally would. Thank you for taking the time to watch this, and I hope you found it informative.